Okay, good evening, everybody. Hope everyone's okay. Hope everyone's well. Hope everyone can hear me. Right, well, I mean, here I was thinking we could have a little bit of a rattle on about old Trump and Greenland and how that's affecting the markets, but it seems that price action just really wants to scare the living bejesus out of us, and that's actually where where we're going to end up talking. But I do want to have a little bit of a discussion about Greenland. I'm no expert. I don't know anything about Greenland except for it isn't green. But we will talk about it. We'll talk about how the markets are reacting to it and maybe give a bit of a view of what I think may go next in terms of the markets. Other than that, yes, we're going to get into Bitcoin. We're going to have a look at where we are in, from this start of this year, where we are potentially in the cycle, big picture, little picture, everything in between. There's a couple of questions which we'll go into, but if you have any other questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. And then as always, we'll get into the lower time frames across the alts and Bitcoin. Well, Bitcoin and the alts that we care about. I think that's a better way of phrasing it. So let's just jump straight in. And I don't know about you, but it's getting quite monotonous. Unfortunately, we have been stuck in this channel now for the last for the last 2 months. 18th of November, we broke down into here, and pretty much, except for blipping over on one day, we have been confined between 94,500 and 86,000 for the majority of that time. Granted, there's a couple of weeks in and out of it, but you get the point there. And it doesn't seem like we're really catching the break that we wanted. We spoke last week, and we were actually getting north of 94,500. Everything looked great as long as we could hold that 94,500 level, which we spoke about on Friday. Sadly, that didn't come to pass, and it now looks, well, I talked about the 90,000, but it now looks really like that 86 kind of feels like it's almost inevitable now. We have been as low as this recently and been able to recover from it, so maybe we find some level of bounce. We're going to look later on. We are oversold across a lot of the metrics there, so maybe there's some relief within that. But that level we managed to get to middle of last week, almost $98,000. There is, a pretty key indicator, which for those of you that tuned in on Friday, as to what, why we rejected initially, let's just call that from that point. Not saying that the world is over just yet, but the 50-year man on the weekly time frame was that level that we crossed. So certainly showed some logic to that. As I say, we're back in this range. Suddenly it's quite a wide range, $8,000. So, yes, all things look like we're getting head down to 86,000. Maybe we're below it, but generally we're going to sort of see some sort of turnaround if the last 2 months are any kind of history. But ultimately, the same could be said with we could just head north, find some more resistance in around that 94,500, 95,000 level. And for those of you that are willing to trade it and just using the ranging volatility that comes with it, there is plenty of opportunity within this range to be had. It's just whether or not, this next time is going to hold out for us. But that being said, Bitcoin dominance is doing nothing. Even more of a range, really. We're not really above 60. We're still above 57. Yes, Bitcoin has slight control, but right now it's neither alt season nor Bitcoin season is what I would suggest from that. And that's reflected in total too, which has lost that $1.25 trillion level. We're back at 1.2 trillion, getting close to that 1.16, which has kind of been, again, the base of our alts for the last 2 months. So feels like maybe there's a little bit more bleeding to come before we turn it around. But just like Bitcoin, we have had experiences of bouncing from this level in the past 2 months. So maybe it does. And then there is... Oops, am I on it? Nope, no, I'm not. BitTensor. And for those of you on Friday, you know that I got out. Didn't like what I looked after the rejection at sort of that 300 level. And to be honest with you, as I said on Friday, I'm not sure how much I'm going to get back into it. I think there's other things to buy there. But certainly right now this is falling. We've gone through some other local levels we'll see on the local time frame. Sort of that 265, which held quite strong for us. We've lost sort of 250, which again was another semi-decent level on the lower time frames. Now we're getting to that 236, and it really feels like, are we going to actually look to retest that 210 kind of level that we saw back end of last year? If Bitcoin's going to head down to 86, it feels like BitTense is at least going to test that, if not maybe a little bit lower. So definitely something to be working out for. Now, you can see on the right-hand side, it's been a bloodbath across the board. Some of these alts double figures, some of them, 20% in Monero, which we will talk about a little bit later on. But we're sort of seeing above 5% for most of the altcoins that we are following. Bitcoin still down 3.5% today. And it's not really eased up. Now, why is that? Is it because Donald Trump has suddenly just gone and announced that he wants Greenland? Is this something that could really upset the market? Well, in classic Donald Trump fashion, this main thrust towards wanting Greenland and his, shall we just say, petulant response to the EU in terms of them not letting him have it. So he's just going to put tariffs on them. Happened back end of last week, over the weekend. Yesterday was Martin Luther King Day in America. So again, the markets were closed. And today's really the first day that the markets have had a genuine opportunity to sort of soak up that news and deal with it. And as we've seen, there has been a fairly decent correction across the board, with the exception of commodities. Well, certainly precious metals, which have all done well. No surprise there. But I do say this isn't the first time that Trump has talked about wanting Greenland. I did do some digging on it, because I do remember sort of this time last year. You got to remember, it was inauguration this time last year, and I remember him talking through the presidential campaign, and after he won it, as he was waiting to join office, how much he wanted Greenland, and I think it came to some sort of spat. We'll get it by whatever means we can, economic or boots on the ground. Which is a classic Donald Trump kind of statement, I suppose. But actually, when I was looking into that, he's actually been talking about wanting Greenland since 2017. Matter of fact, he did it again in classic kind of Donald Trump fashion. He cancelled a state visit to Denmark because, I don't know who the prime minister or president or whatever they have in Denmark wasn't going to play ball with it. So he went, right, well, I'm not going to give you that state visit we were going to have now. So thanks for nothing. So it's not a new story, I suppose, is what has been said. It's certainly been spun as where's this come from left field? And I'm not here to say I know why he thinks for national security they necessarily need it. Appreciate it's a pretty large piece of land, very close to Canada and the United States. But anyway, now the crypto in me could argue that, well, Bitcoin mining in Greenland would be a great opportunity. It's cool. So, when people are talking about all these cooling fans to keep all of those processors and graphics cards cool, that's where you've got it. You've got renewable energy sources there. And so maybe this is all just a ruse. It's not for national security. He's trying to find somewhere outside of Texas, which is where a lot of people are talking about setting up these data farms or crypto mining farms, where they can actually mass mine Bitcoin, which is going to take an awful lot of energy and certainly need some significant cooling for the size of these farms that they may or may not want to. Sorry, I've just realized I read this as January the 8th, 2026. I've actually now just seen it's 2025. So it's a year old, but it just goes to show how long Donald Trump has actually been talking about buying Greenland. Obviously, I don't believe that his push for Greenland has anything to do with the US's stance on Bitcoin mining. Certainly 12 months on from this fairly lackluster 12-month period of crypto adoption, Bitcoin adoption in the United States, certainly from where expectations were in the presidential campaign to sort of what we saw over the first 12 months, kind of been dragging their feet. So no, but there is still those opportunities. And if you want to have a look at this, you can see that the vast majority of Bitcoin mining distribution is in the south, a lot hotter than Greenland would be. So there's certainly some argument to be had there. Another thing that we're starting to see is, aside from the EU pushing back, which we'll speak about in a moment, we're now starting to see that Danish pension funds are like, right, well, that's it. We're having such a tiz with all of this. We're going to sell all of our US treasuries. That sounds pretty bad, but actually it's $100 million worth. I wouldn't say it's a particularly large amount But they're blaming it on the US weak government finances. I mean, I don't know if that's necessarily a true statement. Obviously, it's more probably a political statement just of where that sits. But we'll see if any other pension firms start to follow suit and what the repercussions from that may be. The one thing that has continued to surge higher off the back of all of this uncertainty are precious metals such as gold, silver, palladium a little bit, platinum certainly as well. And they're continuing to make new all-time highs. Gold went past 4,750 today. I believe silver topped $95. I can't tell you where platinum is, but we'll have a look at it in a moment. And wherever the uncertainties necessarily are, a risk-off assets like gold and silver, which are already in a hyper phase at the moment anyway, are just going to drive that run to safety. And you can kind of see the charts here. We're on the weekly time frame, but bear in mind this weekly candle is only a couple of days old, and you can really just see, you know, we were sitting at just under 4,600. We're now at 4,758, so has that a little bit higher today. I don't know why we just don't drop onto the daily. There's a bit of a gap there, so maybe an opportunity for some sort of pullback. But at the moment, the market seems to be moving fairly well in that direction. Silver, similar kind of place at the moment. It is down back in the 94s, but we did see it as high as 95, and its exponential climb continues. And as I say, levels of uncertainty and geopolitical discord are only going to help these things. And you can actually kind of see, even with the VIX, spiked up massively when the markets opened today. So we were sitting in a fairly low risk area of around about 15. Suddenly we're at 20. We're not quite in the 30s when it's high you buy, but that kind of jump certainly raises eyebrows. I would argue, mind, that there's a pretty big gap there. And so some form of stability may come back to just providing a bit more confidence in the market. We'll wait and see where that one sits. And then we get to sort of, I suppose, the main crux. And we know this playbook. We've seen this playbook actually play out for the last 10 months. And so what's going to happen? Donald Trump said, you know what? I've just basically taken control of Venezuela. I really fancy to just sort of push my advantage at the moment. And I'm going to go after Greenland. The EU's kind of stood up with its ally, Great Britain, and said, no, we're not really falling over for this one here. So what's he going to do? He said, right, I'm going to hit you with a 10% tariff on all import and exports. Sorry, I don't know why my voice went like that. Starting from not today, not next week, not next month, no, the 1st of June. So he's given himself 5 months leeway to basically either push his advantage and get Greenland, which I'm not sure how that's going to work. We'll talk about that in a moment, or slowly wind it back. And then you know what's going to happen. He'll suddenly announce that actually everything's all rosy again with Great Britain and with the EU, and the tariffs will have evaporated once more. It is a tale not quite as old as time, but we've seen that play out probably 5, 6, 7, or 8 times over the last 10 months. And the market seems to react the same way. Threats of tariff, market craps itself. Tariff threats get lifted, removed, market recovers. Whether or not, and someone's asked me this question a little bit later on, Trump is doing this for his own gains, I'll leave that for you to speculate. Whether it's just market makers taking advantage of negative news, the old statement of show me the charts and I'll tell you the news. I think there's certainly an element to that. But the market itself, however, reacts in the same way every time. And I don't know if it's going to be tomorrow. I don't know if it's going to be in 2 months' time. But the chances are those tariffs will not remain. This close special ally, maybe not the EU as much with the US, but Great Britain apparently, the actual implications of those tariffs, I think would be very, very unpopular. And you've got to remember, the end of the day, the end of this year will be sort of the midterms in the United States, 2 years into the presidency. I believe his approval ratings is dropping anyway. He needs a big year. 2026 needs to be a great year for Trump to sort of, boost those ratings back up, get him in favor for the midterms, etc. So having a bit of a kamikaze international policy with your strongest allies is not a way to do that. Certainly if you then lose face and have to backtrack on something like Greenland. So I think it's just something to bear in mind. The other thing that maybe it's hard to quantify, but at the moment, the World Economic Forum are meeting, and for those of you in the UK, you'll see Rachel Reeves, etc., giving her thoughts and opinions on Greenland and the US today. But President Trump arrives tomorrow, and he is talking at the World Economic Forum. I wonder what he's going to talk about. I wonder if he's going to sit there and actually engage in, economic discord, or is he going to go up there, big up how amazing America is, big up why Greenland would be so much better off under United States control, and why Europe and the rest of the world just needs to let this happen. I have a feeling it would be an interesting day. It's hard to quantify how that's going to, affect the markets, especially with someone like Donald Trump. We never know what he's going to say or post. But just bear in mind that he is speaking tomorrow at the World Economic Forum. So could be an interesting one. Also, whilst we're here, CPI year-on-year data for the UK. We never really track it, but if you see a little bit of a blip early in the morning, maybe it's something associated with that. I'm not sure why I got that news article there. And then just the other thing, to be fair to Bijan, he actually posted this in Discord. I was going to talk about it anyway, although I didn't have this particular Twitter link, but I've used it, X-Link, whatever it is, because I did see over the weekend comments, not just comments like this, but articles written about the Fed injecting $55.3 billion into the markets over the next 3 weeks through bond reinvestment and reserve purchases, through buying T-bills and everything like that. And that sounds fantastic. On paper, wow, giga bullish, $55 billion. It just rolls off the tongue these days. But as the comment down below kind of suggests, this is an absolute nothing burger. Routine operation, dealing with maturity, structure, trying to sort of point out the fact that actually this isn't quantitative easing. This is just, routine operations of how they do things. And especially the fact that it's 55 billion over 3 weeks. Now that can, we can struggle to visualize that sometimes, but we have charts. So this here is the balance sheet assets, total assets, less than eliminations for consolidation. It's I don't actually know what it's called, but it's a WALCL if you go on TradingView. It's effectively, I've put this chart up plenty of times before, when the chart's going up and the balance sheet is climbing, we're in quantitative easing. When it's coming down, we're in quantitative tightening. Okay, and we can see we've been in quantitative tightening. We've had a little bit of a blip, but I wouldn't say we've necessarily turned the corner just yet. Now I want you to actually zoom in on the lower right hand side of this chart, because for context, that tiny little red squidge scaled out, or to scale, is what 55 billion represents over the next 3 weeks as well, remember. So really we're kind of talking around about 18 billion per week, so you could take a third of that. It isn't that much in terms of the actual balance sheet and what we see. This is the weekly time frame, I accept, but we're not talking about a massive change in structure and direction. So yes, we all like to see bullish news, but it kind of has to be put in context, I think. And for me, and maybe it is just me, where the market is currently sitting, I'm not feeling the bullish vibes as much as some people are. I've kind of had that market psychology cheat sheet up for a while, questioning where we are, and it's going to be up later on, and we'll end up talking about it. But I'm on edge. I'm feeling relatively nervous, and I see articles or tweets or comments like this of people trying to spin, something that perhaps they don't know that much about into some sort of giga bullish statement. And it's not just Lark Davis. There was countless others. I've taken this because Bijan presented it as a tweet for me on Discord. It was easy to just use there. But I think we've just got to remember that this is nothing in the grand scheme of where the market is at. And whilst I admit that stock markets are still doing well, gold and silver's obviously doing amazingly well, cryptocurrency, the crypto market itself, is struggling. Okay, we are in a downtrend. Altcoins are getting absolutely eviscerated. Sentiment is at ridiculously all-time low. Retail seems completely scared to actually make a move, and actually, to be fair, is almost non-existent. and even institutional investors are dipping in and out. I haven't bothered to get the picture, but what I will tell you is MicroStrategy have started buying again. They bought some last week and they bought some again today. So read that as you will, but they are buying too. Right. Oh, that's in the way, so I haven't been able to see if anyone's been putting anything. USTD dominance is rising. Well, there you go. People are going onto the onto stablecoins. They're trying to wait things out. Reclaim the 200 EMA just in time for the Avenger Call. Well, I don't know which time frame you're talking about there, but we will check that out in a moment. In terms of charting, so I mean, there's no real update in terms of me changing the picture since Friday, but it's looking really clean now, isn't it? Really, that 1.618 fib level. We went straight through that liquidity level, which we had done on Friday. So there's nothing new there. We hit that fib level, and then we've just cleanly bounced from it. And the journey down has been, fairly routine. Just straight back down, drawn by the liquidity. I don't know why I don't have the speech marks on there, but in and around 87,000 to around about 86,000. But we do have that 1.414 fib level at 88,000. It's actually worked quite well. I appreciate it doesn't always hold, but you can certainly see some level of interaction with that there. And yes, I accept that we didn't do it here, and that's at very similar levels, which is kind of the narrative we were talking about on the 3-day time frame. So I accept all of that. We are not here to make 100% predictions or certainties. We just have a look at the facts. But for me, that sort of journey to 86,000 is fueled by that level of liquidity, and perhaps the reason we may turn around slightly earlier is that fib level round about 88.5. So even on the 12-day time frame, that's kind of suggesting that's where it's going. Now, this is a fairly steep decline, and we'll see later on there will be vectors that are left here to give us some momentum to pull that back, and we can have a look at things like the RSI to see where we are, but it doesn't need to happen immediately. And the argument could also be that, well, actually on that way up we left vectors, and all we're doing now is recovering those and heading back to the mean. So I think that's just something you've got to bear in mind. I talk about, just because, well, why can't we drop hard when we've rallied hard, or the vice versa? And it could simply be a play just as similar as that. We now look on the weekly time frame with the EMAs there. We've got the 20 and the 50 EMA, and there you go. This just tells everything you need to know, doesn't it, really? The wick up there, straight into the 50 and the 20 EMA on top of each other. A nice rejection from that one. Is a significant level. I talked on Friday that I didn't think we would get through it at the first attempt. We have rejected from that one. All now rests on what happens here. So the last 3 or 4 months, talked about whether or not which side of this bull market we're on. I'm concerned that we've had the non-euphoric blow off top, and we're actually in that sort of kind of can't remember the name of it now. Gotta find it. Oh, sorry, it's all the way over here. In the complacency, there we go. In that complacency kind of phase. And one of the things that we talk about with the complacency phase is that we have then a failed rally back up to the 50 EMA on the weekly time frame, a rejection from there, and a loss of the level seals our fate. Well, we've seen it in 2022. We've seen it in 2018. And well, I'm not going to bother going further back, but you get the point there. And so this now really is, we need an adjustment. I mean, fine if we continue to consolidate, although I don't really want to see that. But we've got to get through it. Okay, we've actually got to break through it now. Okay, we've had our one attempt and our rejection from it. We can't keep failing now. And I truly believe that if we fail from here, I think it's actually over. I think we have to accept that we're in a downturn. Now, the good thing is we're already a couple of months off from when the high was set. So, if it is a 12-month time frame, we've already done a quarter of that already. And maybe we try and find some sort of bottom, wherever that is. That's just I don't know if that's lining up with the price, but I was just thinking more sort of September time before we make a move back up. But I honestly believe that we need to be cautious. I mean, I've been talking about caution before, but now we really do. Had we have had October, November have gotten to 150,000, 160,000, then this drop had happened. Then we had a recovery back to the 50 MA rejection. People would be screaming that the market was over. And yet this time it's not the case. This time it's no, 2026 is the year. And I suppose I asked the question of, I'm zooming out. What happens if have I got a chart of this? I do. What happens if this happens? So this dotted line here is basically 2027. Okay. If this were to happen, okay, if that were to happen, what do we call 2026? 2026 a continuation of the bull market, or is it actually a bear market with a recovery? Because at the moment, the narrative seems to be that I'm picking up in 2026 is going to be an absolute killer year. But no one really talks about what's going to happen during that year. It's just at some stage in 2026, we're going to have an absolutely amazing time. And okay, maybe I've exaggerated the drawing a little bit here. But let's just say we have a collapse down to 50,000, 40,000, wherever. But more importantly, we then recover above 126,000 before the end of the year, therefore making a new all-time high in 2026. Is it a success to just sit on your hands and do nothing until then? Or do we wake up to the fact that actually within that time period, we could have experienced a bear market? We would have experienced a bear market. I mean, okay, I know it's just a random drawing on the chart, but that would be a 70% correction. Is it going to get down to 38,000? God, well, actually, God, I hope so. But even if it gets down to, say, 53,000, that's still a 60% correction. That's a bear market. And yeah, okay, then suddenly liquidity starts flushing in, everything turns rosy again, and we start to get to those all-time highs. I don't know. I think people will call that a victory. I think people will say, see, I told you I was right. 2026 was an amazing bullish year. How could you have ever doubted me? When actually they miss the fact that the utter misery for whatever time this caused being in this position. And yeah, okay, you ride it out long enough, you're absolutely fine. But if we are taking ourselves seriously as traders, is there an opportunity for a trade to be had there? I don't know. And if that were to happen, what's it do for altcoins? So yeah, I think it's an interesting proposition to consider, if nothing else. And all I'm here really to try and do is to just get you to maybe just think a little bit differently. All right, you can think about it and dismiss it. That's absolutely fine, but just have that thought process. And someone posted this to me last week. Is there a run up there to make a head and shoulders before we head back down? I think it's something to watch out for now. We left shoulder, potential head. We've come back down on the neckline, haven't we? Come back down on that. Depending on how high this climbs, that could very well be the right shoulder forming. We need to have a look at it. But, and this is the reason for hope, which I've saved for the end. The reality still stands that we're still in an uptrend. Okay, we are still in an uptrend, and as long as we keep above technically 74,000, although I'd argue the weekly close at 78,000, we're still in that uptrend. And that's necessarily all that matters, really, isn't it? Pullbacks happen. As long as we continue snaking up, we're going to be absolutely fine. Now, we've not been in an uptrend before below the 50 EMA, nor have we climbed back up to the 50 EMA and rejected from it. But we'll let bygones be bygones on that one. We are still technically in that uptrend. And until this breaks, really, there's no need for you to worry. That being said, let's face it. If we were to close at 78,000, you're not selling straight away. Because you think, that's the worst place to sell. I'm going to wait for it to come down, correct, Kobo off, and then do it. But we might not get it. And suddenly then you're getting out at 70,000 when the top was 126,000 and we don't know where the bottom's going to be. You're almost sealing yourself to the fact of, actually, I'm going to have to resign myself to the fact that I'm just going to have to ride it out now, because getting out might be too late. So that's all we're doing with having this conversation for the last 3 months. And sadly, the more I talk about it, the more convinced I am that we're this side. I'll be honest. Love to be wrong and be this side, but I just feel so much evidence is stacking up. And I haven't got them up here. The one thing that a lot of people go to, and I was one of them as well, you know, the on-chain data, all of the pie charts and everything else, pie cycle, sorry, MVRVZ, all that. None of them are flashed to say that we've had the top. And so there is, you know, on one hand, there's a lot of data that is similar to previous market crashes, 50 EMA, just the way the patterns are gone, retail sort of running away. Hell, if any of you were around in 2022, how many celebrity endorsements did we get? Well, next week, I'm going to be talking about, good old Mr. Beast, biggest YouTuber out there, and he's setting up a crypto financial company. It's actually, the token's already launched, if you can believe it. I don't know what that noise was. Sorry there. Yeah, the token's already launched. I'm going to talk about it next week because I just run out of time. Is it BSF? Yeah, it is. Here it is. Launched 2 days ago on speculation that he sort of released some post that said, you know, watch out for the 7th of February. I'm going to make someone a millionaire. Everyone started front running this thing. Look at it. Absolutely climbed up. And then guess what? I mean, he got from 0.003 to 0.08. So it pretty much 30x'd, you know? And the view is that he's trademarked some, I think, Beast Financial Services, BFS, which is going to be some crypto financial service system. And so everyone's getting excited about that. The point I'm making is bear markets. That's when the celebrities come out and endorse cryptos. It happened through 2022 so many times. I did so many videos on the likes of Logan Paul and KSI and other Kim Kardashian and Jason Derulo, etc. I remember them all endorsing crypto projects that went to shit. So, you know, another indicator there potentially suggests that the top is in. I don't think I have to worry too much about slander there, but obviously that's all alleged in case anyone picks up on that one for now. So yeah, that's currently where I find myself. And oh no, that doesn't help when you got an ad there. And it doesn't help. This fear and greed is bouncing around like nobody's business. This is going to be back at extreme fear tomorrow. Remember, it doesn't reset until midnight. After today, a 3.5% fall over $3,500. This thing's going back into the 20s. Absolutely. We don't feel like this. This isn't a pullback in a bull market kind of vibes. This is a we're in the trenches kind of vibes. And that is how I will continue to play it. I am sat fairly decently in USDT at the moment after getting completely out of BitTensor. So, you know, I have put technically my money where my mouth is, I suppose. And everyone's waiting for the rate cuts to continue. This massive exodus, reduction in rate cuts. Well, actually, we're only a week away, and this thing's pretty firmly in it ain't getting cut. And funnily enough, we're not really having that narrative about sacking Jerome Powell and too slow Jerome, etc. And we need to lose a full percent and all that. We're a week away, and no one's talking about that anymore. And so we're going to get that plateau kind of reduction as the data sort of like be data driven again. And it doesn't scream to me that suddenly relief is straight away around the corner. We've got that period that we need to build into. And unfortunately, that could present a very difficult time for us that we just need to be alerted to. We need to be aware of. And sorry, there's a few things coming in. Let me just... Kamal argued last year that a lot of stock market tops are actually subtle declines because most in crypto are used to blow off tops. They might not experience enough to spot this. Yep, that's true. 400 EMA, I'll put that on in a second. A lot of the market has had more similarities to 2000, 2008, and the majority of RT couldn't even legally trade back then. No, I was 18 in 2000, so I show my age there. So retail is too inexperienced to deal with this. Well, I mean, it doesn't feel like retail's here, but I get you. I think the set and forget near cycle tops isn't sustainable. As cycles eventually come in to control and nuke things, people get stuck in tech and narrative when really the cycles are in control. It's not just that. I mean, look at all of us in terms of the AI narrative in crypto. And we've kind of stuck with that for 18 months. And in that time, no one's really given privacy a genuine look into, which has suddenly like privacy's become this big thing. We briefly spoke about it last week. It might have been Friday, but I think it was on Tuesday. Just, you know, institutions, wealthy individuals, whales, you know, if they want to go digital, they don't want every man and his dog being able to track everything on the blockchain, which is the benefit of the blockchain, but it's not the benefit if you're a gazillionaire and you don't want people to know where it all is. And some privacy tokens, they're not dying. They are, I mean, they've had big pullbacks today. We'll have a look at it. But they seem to be a narrative that we could have jumped in on and made a lot better positions, but we kind of stuck to that decentralized AI view because that's what we thought it was going to be. And we were so set in our ways. And as I say, I put my hands up as well and say, I was part of that group, that we as retail, inexperienced to manage our emotions or to actually control the data that we're allowing to register within ourselves, we couldn't see the wood through the trees in terms of actually other opportunities. And whilst there may be a small percentage of people in the space that are in it for the tech, the vast majority of us are in it for the money. We're in it for the wealth, okay? And we need to remind ourselves of that, I dare say. Also, more recession indicators have been flashing. Some of the Mag 7s, Apple Metal, which topped first in 2021, showing they're now topping, okay? Rate cuts in an economic slowdown are bearish historically. Look at unemployment revisions at the moment. Yeah, bearish and bull. All valid points, Bisha. Right, before we move on to, I don't know what this chart's going to be. You want to have a look, Erjan wanted to have a look at the 400 EMA. We're going to have to throw that on. I assume you mean on the weekly time frame. So that's the 400 for you. What's it show? I mean, it showed that it touched in the last bear, but it didn't touch in the bear before that. Let's go for 300. I'd be interested to know why you said 400. 300 looking a little bit better. I mean, we don't have the data for 2015 bear, but you know, 2018, 2019 crash or 2020 crash. Even, I mean, I get you can argue it broke through it, but found some sort of bottoming in and around 2022, 2023. So there's an argument to be made, I suppose, that where the hell's my rectangle? Yeah. I don't know. I mean, it's hard to know how far you pull this down, but yeah, something like that. Be sort of where you can find the bottom. I kind of look at sort of, for me, the bottom is, it's kind of here. January 2024. It's where the ETFs came in. You know, I'm not saying we go all the way to 40,000. That'd be a logical place. Suddenly, you know, get some buying interest back down at that level. You know, you don't remember, people are selling on the way down. Selling on the way up, buying on the way down, buying back to down to the level of 40K where ETFs got back in. Kind of makes sense. So what? I admit we'll have to wait on that one. Maybe it wasn't the 400. There was one you showed a few weeks ago. If we lose that, it's definitely over. I think it was the 100. It was 100 or the 200. Well, let's just do both, shall we? So we've got the 100 there. I was showing that the 100 was holding us. So, well, the 200 is there. I'd say it's the 100. The 200 is kind of like we're way below, making another lower low. We're back at 70,000. But if you look at the 100, this one has been holding us, and it still has. So there's still a chance for that one to come and kick in. And liquidations, Bitcoin liquidations over the last 24 hours, just under 200 million, so over $500 million across the board right now. That's what that noise was. These transaction alerts. People are buying, it looks like. So, you know, 1,000 from Binance to an unknown wallet, 500 from Coinbase to another wallet, 330 from Coinbase. Well, from unknown wallet to Coinbase. Okay, that's the other way. But I don't really follow those, so that's fair enough. Okay, couple of questions, and then we'll get into the detailed chart. So Carrie's asked to just have a bit of a chat about precious metals, and she put, could you cover precious metal, please? Were you to want to trade them? How would you go about that? What instrument, what time frame, how entry? Okay, so simply put, with the exception of gold, there isn't really a precious metal representative in the crypto market. So if you're wanting to trade that, then you're, effectively commodity trading. You need to set yourself up on a platform that does that. Now, the one that I've used in the past, and I think a lot of people have used, is FXCM. I don't know its reach in terms of in Spain and everything else, but you can certainly just go onto this, open up account, feed the account with a certain, you have to go through, it's a bit more, regulated than cryptocurrency. So there is like a little bit of a investor checklist that you have to follow, and then you have to seed your account. It takes a little bit of time for the money to get there. If you want to use FXCM, it's all about downloading other software into for sort of TradingView equivalent, and you effectively can just trade it through those. And if you look, it does commodities, and you can see it's got silver is XAG, gold is XAU, it's got oils, copper, it's got them all. This is just some of the commodities here, and you just place it there. Now it is different, a different style of trading. So with crypto, you're long or you're short in. There are fees that go into it, but you just press, place the order, and then it goes. Whilst on something like this, there is sort of like a take, I suppose, if you will, in terms of the fee that the brokerage like FXCM is going to take off you when you place the trades. So you gotta sort of, I'm trying to think of the word, it's just disappeared out of my head. It'll come to me in a minute. So you've got to bear that one in mind. Again, you're working off sort of pips now, so it's a different way of like structuring your entries, your longs and your shorts. There are videos, I will dig them out for you, but there are videos on the portal which goes into this. And although they're like 5 years old, FXCM has not changed. Okay, it's been the same for 20 years. Well, maybe not 20 years. So the look and the feel of how you place those will be exactly the same. In terms of how you find an entry, there's loads of different methods out there, but it's a similar kind of way. Depending on whether you're wanting to long or short it, you're just looking for maybe an EMA retest or a moving average retest, however you want to do it. Maybe you're looking for a certain amount of colored candles in a row before committing. There was loads of different trading setups and styles that we used to incorporate. I was never massively into Forex trading and commodities trading. I just didn't have the discipline for it. So I'm not the best, but something like that is certainly out there. Now, interestingly, you can then link that to your TradingView account. So if you see, does it have FXCM? It might not do. I thought, yeah, it does. So in TradingView, if you go on to TradingView, down on the very bottom, you'll see this thing called Trading Panel, and you'll see like a little arrow and a maximizer panel. If you hit maximize the panel, it says trade with your broker, and you can effectively trade. You can connect your TradingView account to your broker, and there's all these different type of brokers here. So if FXCM doesn't work in Spain, maybe one of these do. And effectively, what it would mean, I haven't connected it, so I'm not going to bother, but you can use the buy and sell toggles on this chart to actually, it will then use an API and connect to FXCM or whatever broker you're using and just place those trades for you. So you can just work off TradingView if you want instead of their charts. Anyway, something to bear in mind if that is what you are wanting to do. There is an alternative. So there's two alternatives. Firstly, there's crypto. So you can trade gold, crypto, because Pax Gold is a pegged representative of the gold price. So you can long and short this on whatever exchange that you want to do that on, and just trade it as you see fit. I'm going to just close that, and just trade it as you see fit. Fair enough, but it's just gold. You can't do any of the others. There is one exchange that I know about which you can do this on. You need a VPN, certainly if you're in the UK, because it doesn't let you. It does for America, so I just changed I've turned my VPN on to make sure that I had my connection tonight. But I logged on with the VPN there, and sorry, I'm just gonna have the water so it's stuck in my throat. Okay, that's better. So it's called btcc.com. Like I say, if you're in the UK and you want to use this, just set your VPN to the United States. Spain might be fine. And on here, it has a digital or, a tokenized representation of just about everything. You can actually trade the NASDAQ as a token. So you can send Tether or Bitcoin or whatever you want and trade it as if it was a crypto. But what you're looking at is a pegged price of what the real asset is. US oil, copper, silver, gold, all of those assets and commodities can actually be traded through BTCC. I did trade it a while back. I stopped doing it, to be honest with you. So I never had any problems funding the accounts. I never had any problems withdrawing money. I'm not vouching for it though, because I haven't used it in over a year. So who knows where it's at. I just know that these were here. So as I say, silver's there. If we have a look, gold is here. Oh, the IP address is restricted. Well, you just have to believe me. It's not going to let me go back on at all. Maybe. No. Okay, I've lost it now. But BTCC offers you that opportunity if you are in the right IP to use it. So, and that way you're still using USDT. The one thing I should have said with FXCM is certainly if you're based in the United Kingdom, there's no capital gains. So spread betting, sorry, I've got stuck in my throat here. So there is that benefit there. If you were to just want to trade gold and you did PAX gold instead of just finding the commodity on something like FXCM, you'd be hit with capital gains on anything you made through a crypto asset, whereas you wouldn't be liable to that through those kind of brokerage. So that's certainly something to bear in mind if you're serious about it. Now, in terms of how do you find an entry? I mean, okay, this is the monthly chart. Let's get a bit more realistic. It's tough, isn't it? I mean, the daily time frame on gold at the moment, assuming that we're not breaking structure and we're going to continue up, 10 EMA is a fairly safe bet. The only problem you've got is where do you put your stop? You know, if you want to go long here, you put your stop there. The difference there is, what's that? It's basically 450, so 4,580. Stop below the 20 EMA. It's $100 spread in terms of your stop. Now that could cost you quite a bit, especially if you're trying to take it seriously with R multiples, etc. So on it might be hard to find an entry on the daily because we do see that it does pull back to 20 EMA. So you'd have to be a bit, realistic with where you were wanting to place that. So you drop it down, say if there's any better indication here, maybe the 50 comes into play a little bit better on this time frame, and it does, maybe you have to sit on your hands and wait, but we do get retest back to the 50 EMA. Certainly breaks the 20 EMA. Maybe you could start thinking about ladder entries into that position. But it doesn't feel like this thing is going to pull back anytime soon. Certainly with the VIX climbing and the uncertainty around a lot of different geopolitical scenarios right now, and just the hype that goes on from it. It does feel like you'd be wanting to long. When would I consider it shorting? I think it's got to break the 50 EMA and start to continue to come back down. I think you just have to sit on your hands and wait, unless you're going to stare at the charts on the 5-minute time frame and just watch. I'd certainly be looking there. But yeah, gold's looking good. I mean, all of the rest of them are. Silver is just looking unbelievable. Although you could say it's actually started to cool off a little bit. It's still climbing, but you see how this is coming back down already to the 10. But we've seen it lose to the 50, to the 20, sorry. So maybe you start thinking about the cloud in and around the 50 EMA as places to enter. But this thing hasn't lost the 50 EMA in a while. So if you can find an entry which has your stop loss below the 50 EMA, then yeah, you're going to be in a better position. And again, watch the videos on if you've never used spread betting, FXCM, those kind of brokerage, it's different in terms of you don't just want to not have a stop loss and just let yourself get margin called and all that kind of stuff, because it just doesn't work out as well for you. You want to have stops. You want to be treating it with a bit more respect than the cavalier nature that a lot of people use for cryptocurrency. So anyway, that's that. And then Julia's asked, I keep looking at the markets, and every time it looks like there's light at the end of the tunnel, Donald Trump does another crazy thing that frightens the markets and everything loses all the slow gains it has made. It seems to me that Donald Trump is deliberately generating market volatility so he can exploit the highs and lows to line his own pockets, given he can predict exactly when he's going to put the fear or greed into the market. I'm really starting to wonder whether markets will have enough confidence to pump in 2026 while DT is in power. I kind of already spoken about this. So one thing I would say, if that is true, you're going to have to wait till 2029 because he's going to be in power pretty much until then. 2029, is that right? Yeah, beginning of 2029. Unless he gets impeached or something. So I'm still of the opinion that, you know, market makers are the real driving force behind this. And okay, maybe Donald Trump is able to manipulate it that way, but he's kind of rich enough as it is. And, you know, with this new act that's going through, or bill that's going through Congress at the moment, stopping sitting members of the Senate or Congress or whatever from actually trading on the stock market. I don't know if that applies to the president. I'm sure it would, but, you know, if he is doing it that way, it's a surefire way to end up getting caught at some stage. But I sort of just more look at it from, I suppose, cycle theory as well. But just market makers, you know, just driving the price towards the narrative. And, you know, we have been going up for a very long time. People thought 2023 we were going to have the crash. We're 2.5, 3 years on from then, still making new all-time highs across the market. Granted, Nvidia has been carrying the weight of that move up. And, you know, this market volatility just seems aggressive because we've climbed so high over that period that the pullbacks, which are, you know, still, you know, 5%, 10% pullbacks, they just feel wild because we've made such a strong move ahead of it. Karen's put, I've got an IBKR, tried FXCM in the past, and they don't really do Spain. Okay, well, hopefully IBKR, I've never heard of it, but hopefully that works for you. And just quickly, I mean, you can add more, like you can show all brokers here. So maybe there is a IMBK. There's more than I thought. But yeah, just go through, see if any of those, that's if you want to connect it to your TradingView account. Sorry, minimize that. Bijan's put a few more 4-year cycles are in control, which is why it's important to read the charts and not rely on the politician to come and save you. This would have happened regardless. I mean, I know you follow Camel Finance, and I know he's talking very much about cycles, and his opinion is that this pullback is nothing more than a pullback into the weekly cycle low before a move up. He's been fairly right on cycle theory. It's interesting because him and Bob Lucas were quite aligned, but Bob's kind of calling that the top is in. I never got around to using this last week, but I think I saved it. So beginning of the year, Bob Lucas, who is a 4-year cycle theorist, not a Bitcoin 4-year halving cycle theorist, a 4-year cycle theorist. He kind of went on to basically say, look, the top is in. The top came in exactly when it was expected to. Month 38 of a 4-year cycle was a cycle high at 35. Sorry, yeah. We were in month 38 and the cycle high was 35, exactly where it was expected to be. So he's kind of moved to, yes, we may get a relief rally. So this weekly cycle low will be nothing more than a low into a relief rally that will fail and ultimately take us back further down. I'm not sure if Camel's agreeing with that yet, but both of them are cycle theories. I don't know enough about cycle theory. It's something that I want to try and learn a bit more about. But compelling. If you follow Bob Lucas or you have any interest in cycle theory, it is interesting for him to say that he believes the cycle's top. He believes his AI system that he has built is suggesting there's a 55% probability that the cycle is topped. So yeah, we'll have to wait and see. I saw this tweet and I ran some things through ChatGPT. I don't know if I still have it. God, I use this so often, I can't find it. Here we go. So I ran it through. I mean, I asked it a lot of questions. Yeah. So I was, talking about why, need to factor in on-chain data and everything else, blah, 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 blah. And I'm not saying that this is any righter or wronger, if that's the right term, but this is what it says. Top's already in 45%. Final marginal high still ahead of us, 35%. cycle materially extends beyond the first half of 2026, 20%. By the way, I'm not going off that. That was just a thought exercise I was doing off the back of reading this post. But anyway, I digress. Where are we at? I think a combination of the market makers and the fact that there are millions of alts made the altcoin market too saturated. Again, I think you posted something, 400 altcoins in 2017, 21,000 in 2021, 13 million in 2025. It's just too much for people to get in. And you got to remember, a lot of them are meme coins that people do well on meme coins, but most people don't. They struggle very badly off them. And so that just repeated kind of getting downtrodden. And then some of the OGs then wake up, like XRP, XRM, Solana, I suppose, and it's probably considered an OG now. But people aren't in those, and then they rush back to them at the wrong time and end up getting burned. I think, yeah, it's just too spoilt for choice. And you can sit in one asset like BitTensor and it gets its time in the sun. But it's what you do with it. You always assume that time in the sun is the start of the growth period, and it never quite gets that way. R2K, NASDAQ, S&P still making higher highs, still bullish. Yep, at the moment. Just the altcoin market bleeding into every other market at the moment. Yeah, loss of confidence. I agree with that. And yeah, okay, very similar sentiment there. Okay, right. Here we've gone through that. Let's get some charting in lower time frames, and then we'll go from there. So here's Bitcoin on the daily time frame, and sorry, it's on the weekly time frame. And just actually, while we're here, so yeah, we managed to rally up to the 50 and the 20 EMA, which, by the way, are crossing as we speak. Never a good sign in a potential bull market. Doesn't normally happen that, but we'll stick our heads in the sands for that one for now. But you see, even on the bodies, even on the closes of the candles, right back up to the 10 EMA, rejection from those. Okay, I mean, we are building a picture here. I think we have to take it seriously. Dropping down onto the daily time frames, try and get a bit of a clearer picture. So I'll leave the RSI down at the bottom for you to also have a look at. But we can see today we have lost the 50 EMA. Fairly aggressive loss of the 50 EMA. It's highly likely this is going to leave a vector in the wake. We know when we range, vectors like to be recovered. They always do. And so we're probably going to see the recovery of this vector. And then I would argue at some stage, we will see that move back. We will see that move back to reclaim this vector here, particularly as we are getting to the bottom part of the range that we've been in for the last couple of months. And it's what you then do with that when we get back to it, okay? I just think on this one. We have got the 800 EMA down here, currently sitting at around about 83,000. We bounced pretty well from that previously, but we can kind of see, the RSI over the last 2 months has steadily gone from completely oversold to just nipping into the overbought territory, and then a fairly strong downtrend here. We have broken through trend lines on this RSI as well. So, that was a fairly decent trend line. For me, it's no indication of how far the price can go, but it does feel like there's certainly further room for this to fall before we see a true correction on the daily time frame, which, as I say, could take us back down to those $88,000 levels, maybe more. I mean, that's unfortunately the reality of it. But yeah, loss of the 50 is not helping there. It'd be interesting to see. Just a second. I haven't thrown a fib on in ages. We'll do body to body. Boom. I tell you. You ignore fibs at your peril, okay? I mean, it's not the most accurate body to body. I could just tighten it up there. Look at that. I mean, come on. I promise you I did not look at this beforehand. That is from all-time high. Oh, I did not quite. Let's just tighten that up. All-time high to the bottom of the drop in November. And look at where it turned around. 98,131 was a level. We got to 98,100, which was the 20 EMA on the weekly time frame, which was the 50 EMA on the weekly time frame. I mean, I appreciate sometimes a little bit too much information on your chart. It can be a bit blinding, but by God, is it annoying when you go back retrospectively and you see those levels there. You just think, why did I not have this on my chart at the time? So a clear indication of that. And the fact that we went and lost the 236 straight away, we have turned around before then, but just don't rule out a complete return down to this level, unfortunately. But yeah, absolute stellar movement there. Let's get rid of it because on the 4 hour, it's just going to get messy. 4 hour time frame. So now look, this is where it gets a bit interesting, isn't it? Because yes, there's room for us to fall on the daily time frame, but on the 4 hour time frame, we are oversold. We're down at 20. Okay, now we can stay down here. I accept that, but with the amount of vectors that are behind us, the fact that we are oversold, even if it's just a relief rally, maybe back up to the 50 EMA, 93,000 or what have you. We need, I will expect us to climb out of this. We just don't stay down in these levels too low. We may get a false move out and a move back down, similar to the previous 2 times we've been in overbought territories. But yeah, we can't stay down here for too long. We have just had, basically 2 full days of complete selling. And so I would expect, and when we go on the lower time frame, it's going to be even worse this. I would expect some sort of rally back up. And as I say, with vectors and EMAs, I mean, okay, the 10 and the 200 on top of each other. Maybe we just get that initial relief rally to there, drop back down, form that double bottom, similar to the double tops. But I actually think, a move back up to 93,000, give us a bit more breathing space with this RSI before it deciding where it wants to go. I think it would be, completely logical. And then here you are in the hourly, and you can just see how long we spent in there. And as I say, price hardly moved in this period, but we managed to get ourselves back to sort of the midway point before resetting. And maybe that's all we do. And now on the hourly, the 50 and the 800 on top of each other, around about 92,000. So I know it was 93, which is where the 200 EMA is on the 4 hour. But that's sort of 92,000 on the 1 hour. Could easily happen. But again, there's vectors there for us to recover. I know we do have these vectors down, but just given how oversold we are, unfortunately it may do that. But I do expect to see this first before we then start to drive down. And for some of you that have been watching, whilst I don't use the RSI necessarily to start a trading decision, I really do like it in terms of just checking myself, what do I want to do? Do I need to buy right now? Well, wait a second. We're at 75, bursting into 80, 85 territory in the RSI. Probably going to get a better buying opportunity a little bit later on. Similarly, the reverse side of that. So, it's not a case of, right, I need to sell now and get out. Probably going to if you want to sell, you're probably going to get a better opportunity to as this thing resets. So, it doesn't make my trading setups, but it helps finalize my trading decision. I think that's the way of putting it. I mean, 30 is pretty bad down there. 15, it's had its moments down here, but it's just never been able to really get itself away from that. But anyway, it was a bit of nosebleed territory there. Back onto the daily. Let's go on to BitTensor. And yep. So for those who saw on Friday, I did get out. I was kind of waiting for it to get back to sort of 250. Maybe I'd have a look, but it's just looking weak. There's still room for this thing to fall as well. And as I say, this sort of random freehand drawn line, or even this hard line here between sort of 220 and sort of 210, 211. I think it just feels like that is where it's going to. We're already eating into this vector candle, which ends at 230. So I can see it's getting back down there. That's the reality of where it is, and it's kind of how we finished 2025. And what to do, and maybe we can hope for a double bottom, but I feel like I've drawn that double bottom as many times as I can now. I'm more looking at BitTensor. It's just continuing. For me, it's disappointment. And I don't know, maybe you guys in subnets are doing a hell of a lot better. But I just think there's better opportunities out there. That's my honest opinion. And I'm not talking about it from what this asset class can do. I'm talking about price action. So anyway, that's where that once its daily time frame, drop it down. Actually, you know what? Let's do the old fib level on this bad boy as well. See what happens. I mean, it's pretty good. 382, bang on, 296. Rejected from it. It's looking good, that. So, yeah. Don't knock the fibs. Don't knock the fibs. Okay. Down onto the 4-hour time frame. And similarly to Bitcoin, we are oversold, so it wouldn't surprise me to see some sort of relief bounce again, back up to sort of like 265 would be a logical level for two reasons. One, you got the 50 EMA there, so that's fine. But it also, 50 and the 200, there's previous price action, support action and resistance. So coming back to that and then finding it's getting unstuck, I think would be a logical assumption there. And yes, okay, we've retested the 10, but we're so low down, I would expect some sort of move up. Hell, maybe Donald Trump goes to the World Economic Forum tomorrow and says he's decided to drop the tariffs on Europe, and we'll see this thing fly back up. So I think there's an opportunity there. Does it get to 266? I think that's a good level for it to turn around. It'd be one to watch if we get to that level and sort of act accordingly. If it doesn't get through it, I'd be asking some questions. And then the 1 hour, I mean, the level still ties in because you've got the 800 and the 200 EMA there. It's a 50% recovery of these vector candles, which just scream to be recovered. I think that's a solid level for a turnaround, in my opinion. Zcash, I don't have it with me. I actually placed my first trade yesterday on Zcash. And we did all right. It was a short on it. So I actually broke my rule because I locked in profit at $200. I went to bed. And by the time I woke up, it was sat at $470, whatever. I immediately closed it because I'd broken my rule. And yeah, I'll put a screenshot of it on there. But it was just, everything else was kind of looking weak. So, and this is continuing. And it's on the hourly, I appreciate. But on the daily, I've not been keeping up with it. But it's not really recovered from the news of the dev team leaving and starting of a project up. And I think interest has moved into other privacy tokens. Ethereum, I mean, we mentioned it can't seem to get past this 200 EMA on the daily time frame. It rejected. It's lost the 50. The only saving grace, it's so close to that 800 EMA, which has acted as a pretty good catcher in the past. RSI moving down that way, maybe it might fall a little bit through it, but if recent history teaches anything, that sort of 2,900 level, there or thereabouts, has been a good turnaround point in the past. That's what I'd be looking towards. I mean, the rest of these altcoins, we went through this in terms of, not making highs, rejecting, coming back down. We're getting towards these lows. Pippin's kind of lost its 50 EMA now as well, quite significantly. And then XRM, because I did mention on Friday that there'd be an opportunity to look into this. And we talked about it's so overextended, a fall down to the 50 EMA is going to feel like it's absolutely crap the bed, but actually it's kind of a natural recovery. We're getting close to that 50 EMA. And I got to admit, part of me is thinking, if the market, because everything's looking oversold, is going to pump, I do believe privacy points will pump harder than the others because that's where the sentiment is at the moment. Part of me is thinking of taking some of that Tau USDT, putting some of it in Monero, putting some of it in Dash, and just riding that one up because I feel that one is going to climb more than BitTensor will. We talked about that 50 EMA. We're getting very close to that one. I got to kind of judge that because it could fall because it's had such a strong move up. It could fall quite hard still. I mean, this thing's down 18% today, and so it's just balancing that and managing the risks. That's the need to do. Dash, it's nowhere near its 50. It's actually just bouncing off the 10 at the moment. So again, this could lose another 30% of its value before getting to the 50 EMA. It's not the kind of thing you want to be going to put tens of thousands of dollars into in a spot buy. But I think when the market turns around, these things will continue. The sentiment behind them is still pretty fresh, and the reasons behind it are still genuine. So that's what I'd be looking at for those. In terms of everything else, Ethereum BTC, it has rejected. It's come back down to the 200 EMA. Just bear in mind that Ethereum's close to its 800 EMA in the daily time frame. We may see a bounce on that before we see a bounce on Bitcoin, which would then equate to a bounce on the Ethereum BTC chart. So it's at a level which we've seen it bounce from before, but it is continuing the downtrend that it has been in for the last 6 months. Bijan mentioned about USDT is on the up. Matter of fact, it's up nearly 4% today. Getting through some key levels here. You know, from an alt season, this is not what you want to see. You know, you don't want to see UST dominance market share going up. It means more people on the sideline rather than spending it on assets. So we want to see this thing fall away, but it hasn't really left much in its wake in terms of vectors. There are no vectors north, only south, but it's quite a significant way down. I mean, we go all the way to 5%. We're going to be feeling an alt season. That feels quite a challenge to get down there, if I'm honest. I mentioned the VIX earlier, and I've gone through some of those. Circle is in a decline still. It's not made its local low of 66, but it is on the way down. Coinbase, again, it's at its 800 EMA daily time frame. It is partway through this vector candle. Maybe it finds another bounce from there, but I think this is going to be main market sentiment driven, if I'm honest. And despite MicroStrategy buying at 95,000, I think well over 20,000 Bitcoin, it's still dropping, and the precarious level is 150 because there is nothing from 150 to about 120, and then we're really talking about it. I've only just added Astrid on here. Some of us have probably, or some of you have probably bought, because I know liquidity is low, but there seems to be, this was dropping quite hard on yesterday, and it's had a massive turnaround today. So it's actually up. What is it up today? It's up over 10% today. Oh yeah, don't know why I did that. It's over on the side. TauX is down 10%. So for the astute, I know someone announced in Discord that they sold their TauX and transferred it into Astrid. It's funny how one's down 10%, one's up 10%. Maybe it was just that one individual. So that's kind of where we are at, I think. Rattled on now for over an hour. I don't know why I have to, but it's not that I want to say I apologize for being negative. I wish the market gave us a little bit more to be positive about. But I will forever just be, I would rather react to however the market conditions present to me rather than hoping that the market is going to turn around. And until we really see that genuine turnaround, I'm kind of stuck with just the concern that I've had for a few months. And I'm kind of acting a little bit on it, obviously getting out a bit tenser on the last pump. I have been messing around a little bit with my Bitcoin, but I am still in Bitcoin. I've been trying to take advantage of the moves down to 84 and back up to 97. And I've done all right on some, not all right on the others. I'm probably back at about a neutral position. It is just why is that so far? The feed I see from YouTube is so far behind from where I actually am. It's very off-putting. So look, I suppose all it really is left to say is if you're still here, you're still in crypto, you've still got a chance. Of course you have. But I just think what is wrong with preparing yourself for further bad news, not acting necessarily on it, but just sort of trying to get that there. And I make no apologies about repeatedly mentioning that, because if I can just help one of you, then that's absolutely brilliant. And I'll obviously tell you when I'm fully getting out, and I believe that the top had been confirmed, etc. But we are going to get close to that. Sorry, Bijan's put a few more. Ben Cohen has been posting a lot of gold S&P charts. Gold looks so bullish in that metric. Well, it's gonna, isn't it? Because gold's in a hyperbolic state, whereas the S&P is just making nice news, steady all-time highs in comparison. So that's gonna look overinflated because in the last year it's 3x, whereas the S&P is probably only doubled or something. But right now, absolutely, gold seems to be the play to be. But much like that Monero chart, when the music stops, people start selling. Could be an interesting time. I was saying that, from $44 on silver, and we've over doubled that. So what do I know? Lower high after lower high for 2 years. That's BitTensor, you're right. The more ETH Tom Lee buys, the more ETH dumps. Yeah, very true. So I think we'll just call it there. I'm under the impression there is a trading pub on Thursday. No confirmation on that. I will ask after this call. and I'll get back to everyone, but I'm sure we'll get an update between now and then. There will be obviously a charting one on Friday. Enjoy the rest of your week. If you can, trade safe. Someone let me know how everything's going subnet wise. Are alphas doing all right? I honestly have no idea, but there used to be some sort of inverse correlation, so maybe that is working out there. But other than that, I'll speak to you all soon. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Cheers now.